Ladies and gentlemen, let us take a look at the Artifact Weapons preview. What did we think the Artifact Weapons were going to be like? Well, we had the preview, didn't we, at Gamescom? Gamescom was like, we're bringing Artifact fucking weapons into the game, boys. And we were like, oh shit, okay, I can bear with this. There are going to be no weapon drops inside of Legion. You will be using your Artifact weapons from the very beginning until the very end, and that allows us to customize them, and we can make decisions based on the fact that we know what you're going to be using. We know you're going to be using a staff. We know you're going to be using an offhand, main hand, or maybe even a floating fucking skull in front of your head. We know what you're going to be doing. That allows us to do some cool stuff. We can make very, very cool, hopefully in the opinions of the guys using them, looking weapons that you can change, give you lots of choice and variety. And not only that, we can then build in a new system of artifact power, and you will be able to customize your weapons in such a way to augment how you like to play the game. And this will give you extra sorts of ideas. And also, the great thing about this is when we roll into another expansion is we don't have to stick to those things. We can alter them and change them, and we can twist it in a different way without sort of arbitrarily adding another level of talents, as we've seen previously, where we just need to keep extending the trees. So that's the big idea behind them. Met, surprisingly, universally well. And I think Blizzard played into a number of things. One, everybody transmogs their weapons, so we don't need a huge variety of weapons because they're more stat sticks than anything these days because they will change what they look like. Okay? So let's play into that. People aren't that arsed. We're going to let people transmog them and do all that kind of stuff anyway. So let's say that weapons don't actually matter. If we do that, we can do all these kind of extra things on top of that. Blizzard is now pretty much confirmed, if we even take a preview look at the artifact weapons, is that there are now 3 tiers of how they're going to make characters. And probably going forward, it's the best solution. I actually think it's pretty smart. So we've got the first tier, which is the absolute fundamental foundations. We saw those in the class previews we looked at earlier. Now they've introduced the talent system, which had a huge revamp. To some extent, some people say it's huge, some people say it's kind of mixing in what we already have. I agree on both sides. And then on top of that, we've got the artifact system. Now, we probably predicted something a little bit more exciting. If I'm being totally honest, I saw the artifact previews the day they came out. I read them minutes after they were released. And I was like, oh, that's not this. I'm a little disappointed, if I'm being honest. That wasn't what I was expecting. Okay, it wasn't what I was expecting. I certainly had in mind the idea of cool things like the ability of Death Knights to resurrect themselves. The Death Knight Soul Stone came into play, which is missing. It's gone. It's cut on the chopping floor. It's out of there, baby. It's no longer in existence. I was like, oh, okay. Huh. What did we get then with the artifact weapons? In fact, I think it's pretty clear now how this is going to work. So what we got was almost universally across the board passive ability upgrades, okay? And a lot of very cool visualization. So what I've done is, instead of doing every single one, because they're all passives and very, very similar, such as increases the damage of Bless spell, does this, does that, but doesn't actually alter anything gameplay-wise, is I've just done the Death Knight ones in the usual style, and then you can get the idea that they're all like that, right? So they're going to work like this. At the beginning of the game, you'll be able to choose 3 of the big golden circles, okay? You'll start with the solid circle, okay? That is your mandatory first one. You get that. Then you get these Path of Exile style paths, although very, very limited in terms of comparatively to Path of Exile, which lead to the next golden dragons. Okay, and you'll be able to pick out of those. You will be able to pick more over the course of the expansion when new tiers, like new raid tiers, come out, and you'll get runes and stuff to add to these to unlock more of them. So eventually, by the end of the expansion, you will be able to have everything on your weapon. But at the start of the expansion, you won't be able to have everything on your weapon. You'll have to pick and choose what's best for your scenario, and you can respec them. All clear? Good. That's the progression path you're going to get with your artifact weapon. That's how it's going to work. So it was curious to me to see a hell of a lot of passives there. In fact, if we look at the passives they gain, which was, chance to summon, chance to do this, increase the damage of X, what did it look like to you? Because I know what it looked like to me. What it looked like to me was patch notes when they try and fix classes and balancing. It looked exactly like patch notes, which seems to be a really good idea and very front-loaded way of doing class balance going forward with less impact on pissing players off. Blizzard has come out and said on many occasions that the biggest reason people quote, when you unsubscribe, for those of you who've ever done it, they ask you, why are you unsubscribing? You don't have to type anything, but for those that did, the almost universally biggest reason people left the game is because their class kept on changing in some dramatic way. And that's how Blizzard has had to do class balance in the past. What they've had to do is make talents either redundant or change them completely or completely overhaul certain spells because they got the balancing out completely. It just didn't work, and they were like, well, we've got to do dramatic changes to this. This is how it's going to work going forward. From my perspective and in my opinion, it totally makes sense. Is they'll have the foundation spells, which are very few. Very, very few. We saw with each of them, it's like 5 or 6 buttons, and then a few things extra that we don't know about yet, sort of like little niche spells. But in general, you know, probably about 10, maybe a little bit more in some cases, of abilities. Then they give you the talent system to put on there, and that's a choice of passives or unuse. So if you want less buttons, you can do that. You can throw in a number of passives. Balance is something we'll get to shortly. So they have the number of unused buttons and a number of passives, and you can pick and choose how complex or easy you kind of want your class. For the average player, that's how you're going to do it. And then on the artifact side, you get all these extra bonuses that you can attribute to spells that you're using regularly. If you're using more of one spell than another because you're doing different types of content, there'll be some spells here that work better in a 5-man environment, some that work better for long-winded PvE fights, and of course weapons that work, abilities that work better in PvP. And you'll be able to pick and choose your path to your next big ability. By making all of the artifact weapons universally. In fact, there are only, that I saw, I've probably missed one somewhere, so please feel free to interject there. There are only 7 abilities out of every single ability across all the specs of artifact weapon. There are only 7 that are something that you use, right? There are only 7 of them. And they are 1 for the Enhancement Shaman, which is Unleash Doom. There's 1 for the Outlaw Rogues, which is the Curse of the Dreadblades, which drains your health when you use finishers. So this one's interesting to me. Invoke the Curse of the Dreadblades, causing your Saber Slash, which is the new Sinister Strike, to fill your combo points. So very much like Ret, right? What's the name of the spell? You guys know what it is. The Ret spell where you use a holy power generator. It gives you the full one. However, the Dreadblades will consume some of your remaining health, a percentage of your remaining health. So percentage of remaining health works differently than just flat chunks, bear that in mind, when you use a finishing move for the next 12 seconds, okay? So it's got an unused DPS cooldown. It's pretty cool. The Warlocks are getting Shadow Flame Shield. Oh, no, sorry, the Prot Warriors. I read Shadow Flame and thought Prot Warrior. Shadow Flame Shield for the Prot Warriors, entering a defensive posture, causing all blocks to be critical blocks. So good. And Stream of Shadow Flame erupts from your shield. So you go more defensive and more DPS output. Nothing mega there. Demon Hunters are getting Fury of the Illidari. The Hunters get 2 lucky bastards. Marks gets Windburst, and Survival are getting Fury of the Eagle. And of course, the Shadow Priests are getting Void Torrent. Outside of those, right, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 specs, 7 specs, sorry, 7 specs out of all of them, nobody else gets an unuse at all. They're all passive things. Completely passive. The reason for this strikes me is I would hope they would have been more courageous and put some more stuff in there that would have been just really cool. Although I have to point out, some of them are very cool animated. We have things for the Elemental Shaman where Thorim will come crashing down. They put in a lot of cool visuals and stuff in there, but it won't change your gameplay at all, right? The artifact weapons in general, for nearly everybody, universally don't change your gameplay at all. They just add buffs and damage and healing and more protection elsewhere. And that's about it. So I was a little disappointed with that. They could have taken a little bit more courageous, but from a practical point of view, this means that when class balance needs adjusting, they can go in and tweak little things in these many, many, many minor attributes of the artifact weapons, of which there's like 12 or 13 for each spec of minor stuff. They can tweak that ever so slightly to achieve the class balance without having to go in and start changing the foundation spells like they've done in the past. We have to alter these foundation spells. Or fucking around with talents and making this talent useless now or worth, which is always the big problem. It's like, this talent is too good, we can't ignore it. They can just do little tiny tweaks inside the artifact stuff with minor traits. These are minor things where people probably aren't going to notice the difference. So you got, if we look at like a Blood DK, they've got like 6% armor is one of them. It's 3 points for 6% armor. We could tweak that a little bit. Nobody's really going to be that pissed off, right? Meat Shield gives you 6% stamina. We could tweak that a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe now it gives you 8%. Maybe it gives you 4%. People aren't going to be that pissed off when it's like 1 or 2% shifted on a minor trait of an artifact weapon. Considering that previously they've had to smash through the foundation spells and smash through talents to try and get the balance correct, or just flat out posted nerfs, right? Which is what they've had to do in the past, like big nerfs. And people are like, oh my god, we have to do like 13% damage decrease? That's huge. Where now they could do it in several ways. Let's say they need to nerf the damage Okay, let's do an example of a balanced druid, right? Balanced druids are doing way too much fucking damage. How are we going to fix this? Previously, they would have looked at like one spell or several spells and nerfed the shit out of them, right? Moonfire's been nerfed by 20%. Fucking Starfire's basically been put into the ground. They had to do things like that. We've all experienced that with all our different classes. Now they could tweak it ever so slightly. So they could look at abilities like Falling Star, improves the empowerment granted by Starfall by 30%. Let's just change that down to 25% on a minor trait, all right? But to also go all the way through, they could do little tweaks here and there across the board, considering all these talents have somewhere, like Twilight Glow, increase the damage dealt by Moonfire by 6%. Let's just bring that down a little touch. And they could achieve decent class balance, in my eyes, by just doing little tiny tweaks here and there of all little small things, rather than hitting individual spells in a huge way and changing the fundamentals of the class. So that's looking like the artifact weapons are basically the big sugar on top of the cake that they can just sift some off and still leave everything fine below it. All the good cake stuff is all still there. That's not going to change. That's going to be pretty fucking good, and that's all they need to worry about. In conclusion, your artifact weapons are less exciting than I would have hoped. I was hoping for some really big, cool stuff in there. I mean, so I'm sure some of you were like really excited about stuff, and MMO Champ was banging on about Blink having no cooldown. Remember, these are subject to change, and even having Blink on no cooldown, sure, in some scenarios, probably PvP especially, that's really overpowered. But remember, every time you blink, you're kind of locked out from casting stuff for ages. Just blinking around the map isn't going to get anyone killed, although it might mean you are unkillable. Perfectly understandable why people will be angry with that. But overall, that's not the general theme. Those are like the extreme things that are outlying. In general, then really tiny, almost incidental buffs. Universally, they're really incidental no matter what you click on. So I'll leave the talent calculator link below so you can check yours individually. It's not worth me going through them all because they're not interesting. Can I sit down and talk about extends the duration of renewing mist by 4 seconds, right? And then another 3 stacks, so it's like 12 seconds. This is all very, very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. But on its own, individually, they're all stuff that's leading towards what they expect you to have at the end game. They're not making big differences to your gameplay at all. Like, not at all. They're cool. Don't get me wrong. They are cool. I'm happy with everything I've seen so far. No complaints from me whatsoever. They're just not spectacular like I was hoping for. Right? They're not spectacular like I was hoping for. Alright, guys? So, that is my take on the artifact weapon so far. Nothing mega. I was expecting to have, like, a huge discussion on these, and maybe even, like, 12 videos going into them in depth. But that's not the way it's worked out. It's basically worked out as, it is what it is. Nice buffs. Okay, passive stuff. Nothing even as exciting as I'd say in Walls of Draenor, where we gained the extra abilities as we leveled up. And, you know, Avenger's Shield now hits 5 targets. That was big stuff. Blade Flurry hits all targets. That was big, big stuff. The artifact weapons don't contain anything like that at all. So, very awesome. Very awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.